Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Little Prince. Today, we have a guest that JV is literally pissing her pants about. She is so
I'm
excited
so
to
excited.
have this guest on. Before we get into it, we want to give a shout out to Ghost Energy, who is not a sponsor,
Yet?
but we will be drinking them anyways.
We will. And we have Carmen Seantel on today, a real life, actual audiobook narrator, a fantastic one at that. Carmen, hi.
Hi, thank you for that.
Oh.
That's so sweet.
It's my honest truth. What are you drinking?
I am drinking water, a lot of it.
In a giant
Damn.
jug.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's got pockets.
I know it has pockets that you can put. There's multiple zipper pockets. It's great.
Oh, and it's got like a cell phone.
It's got all kinds of things, and you've got a handle. On
Send
the
the
side.
link. What? That's so cool.
It's a nice water
I've
bottle.
never seen something like that.
Me neither.
That's
You
amazing.
have to drink a lot of water to keep things lubricated, so we can.
You do.
narrate.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
So I already have so many questions. Tyler's right. I pissed my pants when you agreed to be on our podcast because I'm like, man, because when we decided to start this podcast, I was like, we want to talk to all people in the bookish creation sphere, not just authors, but like readers and bookstagrammers and narrators and illustrators and everybody who makes the book world go round. And I was like, I want to hit up Carmen. So, and
Yes,
you're here and I'm so excited. So I want to ask, okay, we already talked about your booth glasses, right? Which are like a blue, they have the blue light
like
filter.
filter, or shield, or whatever. Yes.
Because you're in the booth, how much?
So on average, I try to do about 3 to 5 nights a week. And when I'm in here, it's usually at least a 3-hour session, sometimes 4 or 5 hours.
How does your voice handle that?
I take
Yeah,
breaks.
that's crazy.
I take
Yeah.
breaks as much as I can.
Yeah.
And then I try to do a good vocal warm up that kind of helps. But the biggest thing I think that helps with your voice is recognizing when you actually need to rest. Like knowing, like there was a voice I did recently. Well, I was about to do it. I was like, okay, here we go, chapter, whatever. And then I have highlights on the chapter coming up. Oh, shoot, there's this new character. I've not done his voice yet. But in my brain, I know his voice is going to be deep. It's going to be reaching. And I've already been in here for 3.5 hours. I don't think I can do that voice
Yeah.
tonight. So knowing to stop
Yeah.
then and come back the next day probably saved me from
Yeah.
having to take a longer break. So, yeah.
Man, in just that like brief summary, immediately like 50 additional questions popped up in my head because
Sorry.
No, I'm just soaking it all in. Can you tell? I'm like a kid on Christmas morning because
yeah.
this is so the narration space. So I need to know, what's your origin story? How did you get into audiobook narration?
Well, origin story. Okay, there's the short version, which is I needed a second stream of income. And
Sure.
therefore, I was like, well, what can I do on my own time that I can kind of make my own schedule and hopefully help to supplement my income? I guess this. So literally, I found the motivation to get into audiobook narration by needing money, to be quite honest. But this was an avenue that was open to me as a possible second stream of income, second job, when I found a friend of mine who has been doing this for years and years. And I didn't know she'd been doing this, but she posted about it on social media. And I was like, that's so
Red
cool.
lighting.
So we had a whole conversation. She told me all about it. And I was like, I could never. And she said, yes, you could. And then like told me the basics of research and resources. And I bought a microphone, but I didn't have the motivation to actually start doing it because I didn't at that time everybody needs more money, but at that time I didn't need it. So a year later when I needed it, I was like, well, I've done the research and I think I can do this on my own time. So let's see what happens. And that's literally how I got started.
That's amazing. So, Tyler's raising her hand.
I'm going to raise my hand because I don't want to like cut off JV. But okay, so is there like a portfolio that you build of your voice and like the different voices that you do that you like put out there to authors?
So when I was first getting started, one of the things that my friend's Ruthie Bowles, by the way, she's narrated several books. She's
Hi, Ruthie.
she's a sweetie.
Wow.
Yeah, she's
Hi,
awesome.
Ruthie.
But she was the one who was like, here's your resources, here's your reference, your things that you should go research. And one of those things was acx.com. When you go into ACX, it's like this website where a bunch of independent authors can go in and say, hey, here's my book. I want people to audition for this book and I want to turn it into an audiobook. And then a bunch of talent voice actors will have profiles. And on their profiles, they'll have voice samples of their voices doing different things. I researched, I want to say dozens, but it was probably hundreds of different profiles on there trying to see the different
Wow.
types of samples that people would choose. Well, why did you choose this sample? Well, how did you name this sample? So it looked like on average people would have between 3 to 8 samples of their voice up doing different things labeled as male character or romance or fantasy orc or just different types of samples of their voice reading different content. And so I practiced and I used some non-copyright clips and excerpts to create a variety of I want to say 5 samples of my voice, and I just put them out there and started auditioning, with that being my portfolio.
That is so freaking cool. Also, the fact that you said that you were doing a male voice is literally making my brain explode. Because I was like, I mean, you can think about like Pokemon. Literally, Ash Ketchum is a girl, right? In the Japanese anime. So like, I understand that that's a thing, but like, how deep can you go?
That's what she said.
That is not a sexual question.
I knew I liked you, Carmen.
Yes.
Well, depends on the equipment. No, I have
Yeah.
Always does.
the deep male voice is the one that I had to not do right before I took that break, because that one character that was showing up in that chapter that I couldn't do that night was going to be my deepest male voice. I had chosen he's going to be the deepest voice of all the dudes in this book, and I had to not do it that
Wow.
night. But I can it can go kind of low. I've learned though, more than level and tone, it has to do with emotion and capturing the
Yeah.
personality of the character almost more than being able to go deep. But I will say I've gotten some really great feedback on my masculine voices. I'm
That
really
is
proud of
so
them.
crazy. I literally have goosebumps because I like it, and it's just such a fascinating thing for me. Um, how many times do you read a book before you go
I
into
was gonna say, how
narration?
how
I
do
know
you
you're good.
prep?
I want to get one question in.
No. That's a great question.
I only read it once, but
One?
that's only because, so it depends. That's a good question, but it depends. So I will read a book from start to finish, usually one time before narrating. It used to be twice, but we're down to one. And now it's only if I'm narrating more than half of the book. If I'm narrating, say, only 3 to 5 chapters of a 38 chapter book, I may not read the entire book. I might just get the synopsis. I might have a nice in-depth conversation with the author and be like, tell me some relationships, tell me this, that, and the other. But if I'm literally just going to be voicing one character who shows up in 3 chapters of your really, really large book, I may not read the entire book, because it's just not really what am I trying to say? Efficient use of my time at that time.
Yeah.
100%.
So, but if
Yeah.
I'm reading more than half of the book, if I'm narrating and performing more than half of the book, or let's say it's a series, and I need to know this character in and out, then I usually read the entirety of the book. One
Yeah,
time,
because I
though.
feel like
And it's
you have to, a lot of the narration isn't just being able to put the words out right. It's also being able to adequately
Emote.
yes, emote, right? And knowing okay, are they an asshole in real life? Are they sweet? Are they timid? Are they outgoing?
Mhm.
Because that will affect your pitch when you talk to this and even the tempo of their voice. How much conversations do you have with the author as you're narrating, prepping, and then probably revising?
Yeah. Yeah. So we call it, so in narration, you have your 3 phases. Once you're hired, once you've done your audition, you've been hired, you have your prep, you have your production where you're actually recording, right? And then you have your post. That's what I call it. I don't know what everybody else calls it, but I know prep and post are normal. Production is just what I call the middle, where you're actually recording, but the actual, where the rubber meets the road, or what do you call it? Where the bread and butter. I don't know. The main part, the meat, potatoes.
There you
The
go.
You know.
potatoes.
So no. So that's
We got an analogy.
that's
We got
the
one.
production part. Prep. When I'm hired at first, and then we're preparing the script. I have a couple books I'm prepping right now. I like to have this is where I want to have most of my communication with the author. I want to, while I'm reading through, I'm making notes. Wait, how do you pronounce this? Wait, is this in the
Yes.
pronunciation guide? Because before I even start reading, there's pre-prep. Pre-prep.
Pre-prep.
Pre-prep
Prep.
is where I send the author, here's a character bio sheet. Or if you already have a character bio sheet of all the different characters that are primary and secondary, not all the tiny characters who have like 1 or 2 lines, but primary and secondary characters, they show up in multiple chapters. Can you give me a bio? What's their name? How do you pronounce their name? What's their age? What's their accent or regional dialect? And then like, what's their series influence? You know, do they die in book 2 or this is a small character now, but in book 3, he has his own book. So maybe don't give him that voice that hurts the most because he's going to come back in book 3, you know? So like those types of things I like to know. And so I have like a spreadsheet or a table that I send out, but the authors don't have to use that. They might have their own. Some of their own are great. I like to have it when they add in like pictures or this is my YouTube clip of this celebrity who reminds me of my character. Like they'll throw all that stuff in there, and that's pre-prep. I review all of that. And then I also do some other stuff. And then I read through.
How long does that take you?
Oh God. The character, that doesn't take me long. I don't know how long it takes the author. I just send it to them and they send it back.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I read through that. But then while I'm reading after I have that in front of me, I like to have that in front of me while I read the book. Okay, here's Simeon. Simeon is, got it. And then I pick a color. I usually pick a highlight color based on who he is. And then I go through and I highlight, this is Damien. Damien is cool. And then we go through. Yeah.
So how do you, does the author send you just like a word manuscript and do you make notes in that? Because I would imagine when you're about to like read a line, you've read it before. So you kind of have to know how you're, again, going to emote this, right? Are they going to be downtrodden or sad or happy or whatever? Do you make little notes and margins and things, or
sometimes?
How do you keep track?
I have an application. A lot of people use Notability or they use a bunch of different like applications, whether that's Google Docs or there's one that's on Apple. It's something. I don't know. I Annotate is another one that people use. I use Note Shelf. It's just an application where I upload a PDF. And into this PDF, I can just go through and I can highlight. Everybody gets their own color. If they're a primary or secondary character, they have their own color. Then I also will put in the margins or I'll underline certain things. The things that I like to underline are where the author gives direction. So it's where the author says she whispered, underlined whispered. He said with bated breath, or he said gritting his teeth. I might underline gritting his teeth. She said scared out of her mind. I might underline scared because those are like directions of how I'm supposed to deliver the line. So I'll underline those, and then in the margins I'll be like, oh, okay. At the top of this page, I see that this character is going through a journey, and at the bottom it's going to be like a dramatic, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. So at the top of the page I might be like build, and then goes it go in the margins, and then at the bottom it's like keep building, or I might put an arrow. And so I kind of have an indication as I'm reading, okay, I have to like maybe start quieter because it's about to get big. We're about to crescendo. You know?
Yes.
So just like margins, like notes like that. And I just put that directly on the page while I'm prepping. That's when I read the book, that's what I'm doing. Like that's me reading is fully prepping that manuscript.
That makes sense. How does that work when because I imagine you do both, or I guess there's 3 different versions. It could be single narration, it could be dual narration, and duet narration. And for those who don't know, can you tell our listeners what the difference is between dual narration and duet narration?
I can, and this is another one of those analogies that just doesn't work, but I think it's cute. No, we're not going to do it. We're just going to explain it. If I go off too far, y'all just reel me back in.
No, go off.
There's a bee and a bumble. There's a bee and a bumblebee and a bear. No, we're not going to go there. No, that is the analogy. Okay, so we have dual, solo, and duet, but then there's also multicast. So we're going to start with dual narration and duet narration and solo narration. Solo, exactly what it sounds like. There's a book with 50 characters in it, and guess what? I do all 50 characters and I do all the narrative. When there's no dialogue, it's still my voice. That's me. That's solo. The most characters I've ever done is like 36 or 37, so I've not done 50.
That's fucking bonkers. What?
And they all had a distinct voice?
I thought so.
How do you... Okay, next question.
I've never listened to an audiobook ever.
Girl, I've never out.
I'm going. What was that book? Because I'm going to go listen to it.
A trial. I think it's called A Trial, or is it just Trial? It's just Trial. Trial of Light by Ellis Worth.
Okay.
There's a door knocker that talks. That was my fun. That was the voice
Okay.
I had a lot of fun with.
Wild of life.
There's also there's a shadow daddy. It's a little spicy. Also, I didn't narrate it.
Okay.
Audrey Obeyn did, but she's my romance pseudonym, so it's kind of me.
Audrey
Audrey
Obeyn.
Obeyn.
It's like Sasha,
Child of Light.
right? Beyonce has
Yeah, like
an
that.
alter ego.
That's so cool.
No,
Okay,
no,
sorry.
no,
I
no,
didn't
you're
mean to
fine. So
interrupt.
that's
Continue.
solo. I did all the voices in that. Now,
That's crazy.
there was a chapter in that book where, let's say, Sebastian has a whole half a chapter where it's from his POV. So it's him talking about his experience and all the other things. So you would imagine if this was solo. So I then just did that whole section of that chapter in my mask voice, including the narration. I walked into the room and I saw, like, it was just pretty much all his voice for that. But normally it's my femme voice because
That makes sense.
Go ahead.
Because you would. I'm so sorry to
No,
interrupt you,
please.
Carmen. So because you have like first POV, right? So when you do a first person POV,
Mhm.
do you then also narrate it in the voice of the POV?
If it's solo, you have to. So let's say it's a solo book, and you have alternating POVs. Every other chapter, you've got Sebastian in one chapter, and you've got Marilee in the next chapter, her POV.
Yes.
But it's all solo. Well, I'm Sebastian for an entire chapter, and I'm Marilee for another chapter. Like solo narration, you got to switch it up, right? But if it's dual narration, Sebastian has a narrator assigned to him. There is a narrator who is doing all of Sebastian's POV chapters. Everything that's from Sebastian's POV, whether it's the narrative or the dialogue, will be Sebastian's voice actor assigned. Everything from Marilee's will be the femme or whoever the narrator is assigned to Marilee. That means that even in those POV chapters, when Sebastian talks in Marilee's chapters, it'll be Sebastian as she hears it. So she will, the femme or the voice actor assigned to Marilee will even do Sebastian's voice when it's in Marilee's POV. She does everything that's in Marilee's POV.
Oh, so interesting. So it's like, I don't know, when I read a book, I hear my own voice, right? Like I don't hear characters' voices when I'm reading, so it's kind of like
Exactly
that.
like
So
that.
it's him, but it's her version
Yes.
of him.
But it's really
Oh, that
fun when
is
you do
so
dual
cool.
because you get to like confer with the other voice actor. It's like, okay, so you're Sebastian, I'm Marilee. This is what Marilee's gonna sound like. You have what Sebastian's gonna sound like. Okay, cool. I'm gonna do my version of that. I got you. Okay, but then what about grandma? How do you hear grandma? Because I hear grandma like this. And then you kind of work together to make sure grandma kind of sounds similar from both of your POVs. It's a lot of fun because then there was one book I did where we did kid voices and we talked a lot about making sure the kid voices sounded similar from whoever's POV it was because they're the same kids. It's just different ears listening to them, right? It's so much fun. So that's dual. We got solo and dual. Duet is where, well, you're in Sebastian's POV. Sebastian's narrator is doing all of the, I walked into the room and then I saw her and she said, and it's not him doing her voice. It is me doing Marilee's voice. Duet is I'm assigned to do every single piece of Marilee, whether it's her dialogue in somebody else's point of view chapter, whether it's her point of view and I'm doing her narration, her exposition of this is what's happening around me. I do everything Marilee. So if she speaks in any chapter, whoever's POV, I will do that voice, or the voice actor assigned to her will do that voice. So it's a bit more like a play.
Yeah.
Right.
So I assume from a production standpoint, because you don't just narrate, you also do production, right?
I just started. I just started. I'm doing my
I was just gonna ask, the editing on that must be a fucking nightmare.
That's why it tends to be more expensive, right? For an
Yeah.
author to do like duet.
Especially when you have two different files of the same scene coming together.
Imagine
and then ending it naturally.
Imagine multicast, because you can do multicast dual and multicast duet. So imagine it's a series, and each book in the series has a main character, but they cross over into each other's books. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But one shows up in book 3 and book 4 and book 5, and it's all book 1. So whoever was assigned to voice that main character number 1, the author's like, oh, I want main character number 1 to be the same voice. So when she talks in books 3, 4, and 5, I want it to still be that same voice. But then you've still got all the other characters. So it can sometimes turn into a multicast where you will just have like a play. You'll just be throwing in a whole conversation with all these different voices. And you can do that dual style, which is really difficult. Let's say you've got 6 different POVs in the book, right? And then you have to each of those POVs will do all of the voices in their chapters, but you've got 6 different voice actors, maybe,
That
possibly.
is,
And then there's the
I,
multicast duet where you've just got them spliced into everybody else's chapters. Yeah, it gets expensive just because it gets more expensive.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. I can't imagine. Like, I feel like it's voice acting. I mean, that's such a skill. It's such a
You have
skill.
such a good voice. I just
Yeah,
have to say.
beautiful
Like
voice.
also like audio quality, amazing for this podcast.
Well,
So
she's
excited.
in her booth.
I
She
know.
prepped.
But like you probably hear this all the time, but like literally talk me to sleep.
All the
Your
time.
voice is so
Okay.
soothing.
Okay, so this is a creepy little tidbit, but so Carmen does TikTok lives, and I will literally put her TikTok live on as I'm like reading a book, or as I'm like
You've mentioned
sitting in
this.
bed, or I'm writing my own book because it's so soothing.
Yeah, I put people
Yeah.
to sleep. I've been called Miss Melatonin before.
No, it's
Yeah, that fits. That fits.
I have Carmen on in the background, so it's
I'm
not
gonna have to
creepy.
have Carmen on. Carmen, you're gonna be part of my family.
trying really
now.
hard.
It's just
It
Carmen
took me
all
a
the
while to
time.
take it as a compliment because I'm like, wait a second, does that mean I'm not engaging? Does that mean I'm
No,
boring?
no, it's wonderful. I mean, I feel like to me, it's like having family around. Oh, this is so weird. I mean, just please, I'm not a stalker or anything, but it's like, it's like that background noise. It makes you feel like you're not alone.
Mm.
It's wonderful. I just love
I have a
listening.
question. So I'm just thinking about like, okay, so if you're talking about a series, let's say you've got an author who's writing 6 books. Are you, as that voice actor, are you locked in for those 6 books, or are you doing book 1 and then if you're available, you're doing book 2? Because I could only imagine like when something happens, somebody's in the hospital, a voice narrator's in the hospital, they can't do the narration for that book. Is there a point in time where you would take on a persona of that voice actor and then like mimic them? Or I know it's probably never happened to you, but this is just where my brain goes. Pretty much, are you locked in for the full series, or are you doing book by book on availability? Because I can only assume that you're busy.
Thanks. But the answer is sometimes. So that's actually having
Okay.
you being somebody who's not actually like listened to many or any audiobooks, that is something that literally has happened. And I don't know exactly who, and I'm sure it's happened many times, but there's one example that's in my brain that I don't remember exactly who or the book, but there was a voice actor who was just suddenly no longer available. It was a very well-known series, and now somebody needed to come in and voice that character. It was a masked voice actor. I don't exactly remember the situation, but I do remember reading reviews. Because I do a lot of studying. I read a lot, and I study the industry, I study people, I study other people who narrate the similar genres that I do. I want to know everything and the ins and outs, what to do, what not to do, what if that was me. And there were so many great reviews about how the replacement, the step-in narrator really honored the original narrator.
Oh,
It's
that's
kind of like the whole Dumbledore
great.
thing.
That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Kind of.
Yes.
Oh
It
yeah,
just really,
yeah.
I thought that was really interesting, and I'm like, okay, cool. So if that ever happens, great to know. But so right now there's a 6-book series. I didn't know it was 6 books. I thought it was just the 3 because I'm working with a production company. Sometimes the question of how much do I talk to the authors, a lot during prep, hopefully not only, but hopefully most of my questions are answered during prep. Then when I do the production phase, I'm just recording and performing, and all my questions are answered and I'm good to go. If something comes up, sometimes I do still reach out to the author. There was one time there was this like automated voice, and I'm like, oh shoot, is this my voice or a co-narrator? Who does the automated voice? Like questions like that might come up. So you do that. And then in the post-production, it's on the author or the post-production team to say, hey, you messed up that word, or hey, that accent wasn't quite what we were looking for. Just little things, or hey, there was a click or whatever. Like sometimes you say toward instead of towards, and that's the post-production. Sometimes the author takes that on. Sometimes it's an entire team. Now, if I'm working with a production company or a publisher, I don't usually talk to the author very much. I talk to production. I talk to that team. So I'm working with a production company who hired me. They cast me to be a main character, the femme voice for 3 books in this series. I thought it was a trilogy. The author shows up to my live streams when I live stream my work sessions, and I'm like, oh, that's the author of this book that this production company hired me for. Hi, we've never talked before. Nice to meet you. Come to find out, it's a 6-book series. I didn't know that. So maybe I'll be signed for the next 3 books, but right now I'm only signed for the first 3. So we'll see.
Interesting. Okay.
That's cool.
I couldn't imagine how, like, again, I've never listened to an audiobook, but I couldn't imagine listening to 3 books of one voice of that person. And then all of a sudden the next 3 books is a different voice. I'd be
Wait a
like,
second.
wait a
Yeah.
second. Yeah.
But it can
Yeah,
happen. Like, you never know. Things, and it's really nice when
Mhm.
folks can be
Sure.
understanding, because like you said, life could happen, things could change, medical emergencies, who knows what. Yeah.
Yeah, how does that work when you get sick?
Or when
I
family's
mean,
in
your
town
voice is your asset.
unexpectedly.
Or when
Yeah.
family is unexpectedly in town and you have like deadlines and things like that.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, you see, there's this thing that we don't really know all that well. It's like it's a secret thing that not everybody knows about, and it's called sleep. We don't know about it because we don't get it. We just
Yeah.
don't
Mm.
sleep. It's really bad.
Sleep is
It
important
is.
to
But
recover.
when you have deadlines and you get sick, you sleep then. You sleep when you're sick. You sleep
Mhm.
when you have to. So, like, unfortunately, there are times where yeah, you just have to make up for time for me, unfortunately I cut out sleep. It's not a good thing, but you got to do it sometimes, I guess. The other things you can do, and
Mhm.
most people are very aware of this, the best thing to do is plan in your schedule the just in case oopsies, right? You plan into your schedule a week or 2 buffer of my deadline is this time frame, but I've got a week buffer just in case anything happens. I have
Yeah.
started to plan those in, but because I'm so worried about other things and I have so many things like backed up close to those buffers, I don't like to even work into those buffers, which is currently where I'm at, but whatever. The other thing you can do is reach out to production, reach out to your author and say, "Hey, I'm sick. Hey, my
Mm.
knock on wood, please everybody, my computer broke down. Something happened with my
Mhm.
computer. Hey, whatever could have happened. There's construction. Literally, let's say that there's construction outside. There was a water main that broke, and they've been drilling
Didn't
into
even
the
think
road for
about
the
that.
last 3 days that I cannot record. Like, that kind of stuff is actually a lot of times included in our contract as like a force majeure type of thing. That's like, hey, we couldn't help that our deadline's going to be busted. We're giving you information because I have to extend my deadline. And I've never had an issue with anybody, production company or anybody, if you let them know that ahead of time, if it's out of your control.
So when you work with a production company, are you like part of their regular roster or how does that work? Because you're also, again, you're just newly into doing your own production.
So, yes. I don't know. um,
If you don't want to
no,
talk
I
about it, you don't have
can.
to.
So it's weird.
And you can just talk about it to us and we could just remove it
Oh,
from the
it's fine.
podcast.
It's fine. I'm just like, it's weird for you to be like your own production. I'm like, don't. That's weird.
But
Does it have a
No,
name?
it's
Does it
literally,
have turtle in it?
it would be
Oh.
cool though. That's an idea. No. So when I have my own production, it's literally there's an author who came to me and has hired me to work, but she also wants me to manage the production, which is
Yes.
production, right? So I'm managing it. I'm helping with
Mhm.
casting. I'm
Yeah.
outsourcing the post production, the proofing. I mean, I'm doing all of that. I'm a producer. It's kind of cool.
That is so
I'm excited.
cool. Congratulations.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so excited. So but it's one project. It's not an actual company. I'm just doing it as a thing. Yes, there's a contract for it, but it's like we'll see how it goes. But
It starts with
I
one,
know.
though.
So typically I get hired either by the author, but the production company. If it's with a production company, the first time that you get hired by a production company, it's usually because you've reached out to them and you're saying, "Hey, I'd like to work with your company. This is what I can do. Here's my profile of what I can do. Here's my resume or my samples or whatever. Please hire me." And then they might, or they might not. If they do hire you and you do work with them from that point forward, what I've seen typically is that means you are now on their roster. Cool. And then when they're casting for projects in the future, they might be like, "Oh, well, we need somebody who can do this, this, and this. I've worked with Carmen a few times. I think she can do that. Let's look at her profile. Yeah, she can do that accent. Let's reach out to her and send her an audition. And oh, this other person on our roster does that here. Let's send that person an audition." That can happen. That's how I've gotten several of my work, which I'm very excited about. And then there's just working directly with authors.
So which production company are you working with?
A few.
Other than your own.
That's not a company yet. No. So I work with
Yet.
Podium Entertainment was the first production company
Love
that reached
Podium.
out to me.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was
wow.
really excited.
Nice.
That was shocking when it happened, but it did. So Podium Entertainment was the first one. And then I worked with Spotify, so I am currently on their roster, as well
Cool.
as Pink
Wow.
Flamingo and High Gravity Productions.
Oh, High Gravity is great
They are
too.
so great. And
Yeah.
OSYS Productions. Those are the folks I'm working with to do Candy Steiner's not newest book, but a new release of Love Letter to Whiskey, which I'm really excited about.
I saw
And
that.
there's a few others. I also work with a couple publishers. I'm working with Penguin Random House. They've been sending me auditions. I haven't booked anything yet, but keep your fingers crossed, please. So Penguin Random House, I was with them mentoring.
At the same time.
That was perfect
I
timing.
really like
And then I also just narrated my first ever children's book is coming out next month with Hachette, publisher.
This is so
Hachette
cool,
Audio, yeah.
Carmen.
Wow.
So are you hoping, we're not going to talk about details, but are you hoping that eventually this might be a full-time gig thing, career
I don't
switcheroo?
Okay,
You don't know?
if we have to talk about full time, which is fine, I'm happy to.
We don't have
No,
to.
no. If we're sorry, if we are going to switch over to talk about full time, we have to bring in the idea of AI.
Yes.
Because
And we just talked about that a little bit earlier.
With an author.
With another
Yeah.
author.
it's really difficult to say that this is a secure I'm an actor. I'm a voice actor, right? Being an actor, I don't know how secure being an actor is. I do think that as a voice actor, what I've learned in all of my research and studying, I told y'all I like to research and read and study, and I want to know the industry's in and outs. And everything I've found is that it is very good to have some backups, some fail safes, to be a producer, to be an engineer, to be a casting person, all the other things that I'm trying to learn how to do as well. Keep those going, because acting is never like a sure thing, unfortunately.
Any kind of creative.
Any kind of
Exactly.
work.
But
then when you throw in
Same with the
freaking
author.
AI,
Yeah.
there's that worry. And so while I would love, if somebody was to say, hey, you can be full-time tomorrow, I'll pay you to be full-time tomorrow, I'd be like, yes, sir, let's do it. Yes, ma'am, whatever you say. But like, if you say, okay, do it, it's not that easy, because my worry is, well, I have a family. Like, I am providing for, there's 6 animals in here and a bunch of, there's a lot going on, right? You're not cheap.
Yeah.
And I have to think about, well, going full time is fun and cool. And yeah, I could get the work, but like maybe possibly could get the work like today, but what's going to happen next
Tomorrow.
month or the next month or the
Yeah.
next month?
Yeah.
And it's also really financially responsible to have multiple streams of income,
Yes.
right? So doing it the way that you're doing it now, and it sounds like you're definitely making a name for yourself. I'm sorry, I'm very novice when it comes to anything audiobook narration, stuff like that. So if you're already like literally like a huge narrator and I just have no idea, I apologize.
I'm not. I'm so small. I've been doing this for like a year and a half. I have 19 books out. That is it. I will say I have
That's
over
pretty
30
incredible.
recorded.
That's a lot of freaking books. That's how many hours? Like, so if you're going, what, like 5 hours per book? 6 hours
So
per
my
book?
longest book to date is 23 hours, but I was only responsible for 13. It was
Never mind.
multicast. Yeah, but my longest solo was actually
Only half of the book.
my longest solo
Was that a
narration was, like,
fantasy?
13 hours. Say again?
Was that a fantasy?
It was a why choose spicy. It was hold on. Hold please. It was this bad boy.
Jesus!
Was this indie?
The brick.
Was this an indie or is it trad?
No, it's indie.
Yeah, because only indie authors get away with a romance being that thick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a thick boy.
Mine are like chunky too.
Yeah.
It was nice. It was nice.
Here's our chunky, yeah. Okay, so I have a question in regards to and it's really funny because we're like this isn't going to be a back and forth interview, and this is exactly what it's turning out to be, because it's so fascinating what you do, and it's so totally different from anybody else we've had on this podcast. So thank you for sitting down.
Narrators we all have different stories, but similar.
Yes.
Like, seriously, and they're so interesting. Like, I don't have a performance background. I don't have a lot of narrators do. Is like they are actually actors. Like, I got into this and I'm like, oh wait, I'm an actor too. Okay, cool. But like you've got some who can do, like, they're dialect experts. They can say expert. They're really, really talented and awesome, and they have have so many different backstories. The best thing, in my opinion, about being a narrator, other than being able to make books more accessible to everybody, because that is like amazing. I've been listening to audiobooks since I was like 9, 10 years old, and they gave me so much that I just didn't get from physical books. I love physical books, but audiobooks helped me so much as a kid. So I love being a part of that. But even more than that, being a part of this community, I highly recommend y'all reach out to some voice actors. We're cool people.
Totally.
Oh,
We
I
we
want them
want to
all
have
on.
like like literally anybody who puts a fingerprint into creating a book. We want to have on. Like even beta readers, stuff like that. But my question is, you said that you listened to audiobooks since you were like 9, 10 years old. When did you first start reading? Like when did you first fall in love with reading?
Well, those are two very different questions. I first started reading when I was like, in my opinion, in my parents' opinion, it took me forever to start reading. I was like, I want to say 5, like right before kindergarten. And I don't know. I thought that
Wow.
in their opinion it was late. It might have been late. I felt like it was late because I was fighting it. Because I remember seeing the words. I remember Hooked on Phonics. Oh, I'm old. Anyways, I remember seeing the words and being like, I don't want to. I don't want to. I just couldn't stand, hated it. I couldn't stand the idea of reading. Why do I have to do this? Oh God, that changed. By the time I was 6, 7 years old, first it was like I'm going to date myself, but first it was like the Babysitter Little Sister series, right?
Oh my gosh, I loved that
Then it was
series.
Twitches. Then it was Brian Jake's Redwall series. Then it was, y'all, I have a wall bookshelf that takes an entire wall. The Dear
Ooh.
Diaries, Royal Diaries series, the Animorphs series, the Harry Potter, of course, was a thing back then. Oh God, I'm so old. Lord of
Mhm.
the Rings, all of the classics.
You're not old. I bet you we might be older than you. Potentially.
But like my first audiobooks were on cassette. I think I started loving reading when I was 7, 8 years old. And I
Wow.
remember having to get like special permission to go to a different section of the library because I was reading up. I was reading so much, so far up. My local-ish, I'm from a very rural area, so my local bookstore is like a good 2 hours from where I lived. But they knew me by me walking in. They'd be like, "Hey, we got that new book in." Because they knew I had these series that
Mm.
I loved, and that would be the first place I'd go to every time we went shopping at the big city. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
I live
that.
in a small town of like 300 people. My closest bookstore is like an hour and 30 minutes away. So I'm just gonna make my own
Do
bookstore,
it.
buy all the books.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually want to buy a book, like an old school bus, and turn it into a mobile
And
bookstore.
then that would be so cool
That's
because you
my
could take it to like other rural places. I love that
yeah, that's my
idea.
idea.
Look, my hometown,
Yeah.
500 people, so you got me beat. But yeah, 100%, I get it.
Ooh. That's you know what? Small town living though. There is nothing
Nope.
like it.
Which is actually a
Carmen is like,
difficult thing for
no.
me because I'm from such a small town. When I talk about like, I've had people compliment or comment on my ability to create character voice. They're like, it's not like anything you would have ever heard before. I'm like, yeah, because I have to create. Because a lot of times when voice actors work, they work off of their foundation. Who they've heard in their childhood, or who they've
Mm.
been around, and a lot of my life was spent around nobody. Like tiny little town, and we all spoke the same. There was no accents or other dialects to speak of. And I grew up on country music television. And I Love Lucy. Like
Mm.
that's all I got. That's the extent of my dialect foundational characters that I can refer back to, some friends as well, right? That's it. And so
Mhm.
when I create character voices or random things, it's just like, okay, a lot of it's just literally what I hear in my head when I'm reading, just some random voice.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I
Yeah.
want to know, so you do a lot of studying. Do you take like, because actors take like, oh, an improv class here or this and that. Is there something like that for like voice acting? Do you do that? Like for dialects? Oh, you know what? I think it would be great to learn an Irish accent.
Yeah.
Do you do something like that?
Yeah. So after doing
That's
this for about
awesome.
6 months, I decided, I know a lot of folks say that they think that they should start with coaching or start with acting or start with learning how to be a narrator and then be a narrator. And if that works for you, cool. I didn't have the money at the
Mm.
time to spend on that. So I was like, let me just see if anybody wants to hire me and I'll learn as I go and do my best and do some self-studying. After about 6
Yeah.
months, I was able to invest some of what I had earned back into myself in terms of paying for classes. So there's voice acting classes, there's dialect coaching that I've attended. There's also individual one-on-one coaching from other narrators or voice actors, and I've also done some of those, and they've all been extremely helpful.
Who is one of your other, like your favorite voice actors?
Brian Jakes. Brian Jakes wrote the Redwall series. He was my first ever fall in love with audiobooks. Brian Jakes
Oh,
was a
really?
radio personality, a radio host in the UK, and he wrote an entire massive series of little mice and badgers and voles and hares, and they would all be fighting and have their own little world. And he did all the voice. He was solo. All of it was solo narration. Imagine being able
Wow.
you could tell just by his voice whether it was a mouse talking or a badger, and not only whether it was a mouse or a badger, but which one, who it was.
I know that.
That
It's
is
so incredible.
bonkers.
So
The Jim
impressive.
Dale, who did the
Dale.
audiobooks for Harry Potter. Oh my God. I mean, it's so lively and just so animated. And yeah, there are some amazing.
So while I love like dual and duet and all audiobooks, I have a soft spot in my heart for solo because that's what I heard, that's what impresses me, and I want to be able to carry that many voices and distinctly be that engaging for an entire book, an entire cast of characters. That's like a
Yeah.
dream.
Definitely a
Yeah.
skill to have, and then to be able to keep that separate in your head. I have to say though, as a romance author, single narration, solo narration is good if it's a I think a female narrator doing it. I have a tough time with a mask narrator doing a female voice, especially when it gets to the spicy scenes.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm always like,
I couldn't imagine.
I don't know. See, and I don't have that when it's a femme doing the male moaning, but I have a hard time when it's a mask doing the female moaning. I'm like, no,
Can we
it just
talk a
doesn't
little
hit
bit
the
about
same way.
female moaning though? Like, because I think female moaning needs to happen more often.
Oh, way more.
Dudes growl all the time in their little spicy audios, but I don't hear enough moaning. I don't hear enough femme sighs. I don't, if you were to stretch right now, you'd make a noise.
Little
I want to hear that
whimpers.
in my audiobooks.
Yeah,
I do too.
mostly cracking, but yeah.
Well, there's that too, but maybe not the crack.
I'm with you.
Excellent.
I like a lot of moaning. I like when I read the spicy parts. I like really vocal. I like vocal guys that express their pleasure vocally, and I like the female moaning.
I want both. I
Yes.
definitely want both. I will say there was a book. I'm really terrible because I don't remember the actor's name, the narrator's name, or the author's name. I remember it was about a morgue. But anyways, so the femme narrator is somebody I've worked with. I look up to her a lot, and she's like, "You need to listen to this." And I listened to it, and it was my favorite ever femme voice I've ever heard with a mask narrator because it was duet.
Really?
Oh, or
What was the
it was
book?
dual. Oh, it was I forget his name. I know it was Victoria Connolly was the name of the narrator, and the book was called something with a morgue. Oh, I don't remember exactly.
I'm just seeing if I can look
You
it
probably
up.
could if you look up Victoria Connolly morgue. You'll probably find the name of the book.
We were just talking about weird random search histories.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Wait, why was Victoria Connolly in the morgue? But she is an amazing voice actor. If you want to talk about like femme narrators who have great, how low can you go? Victoria Connolly with her masked voice.
That's
Oh.
crazy.
But whoever was her co-narrator in that book,
And he did a great.
oh, his femme
Femme.
voice was so good. And there was a spicy scene in this.
More
Yes,
to
More
love.
to Love. Yep,
no,
that's it.
that's okay.
That's the
Morgue
book.
Okay.
So
to
if you want to
Love.
listen
All right.
to, I wish I could shout out the guy's name. If you can find like the male narrator's
Oh,
name.
yeah.
Who's the guy?
That's
Benjamin
him.
Sands.
All right, we're looking him up.
I love his femme voice.
There we go. Okay. I feel like we're going to have to wrap this up quickly, but I feel like my justification for not listening to audiobooks is because I feel such an allegiance and such a like comfort. I'm a mom. And I have my kid like full time. I work full time. So like getting into my bed with a physical book and just like cracking it open, that's like my comfort place. But I think speaking to a narrator, like you've definitely piqued my interest into audiobooks. I don't know. It's a weird allegiance I hold to physical books, which is why I literally just started reading last year when I was very heavily pregnant and I couldn't do anything else. And I went from like 3 books to, I don't know, like
94,000.
200 on my TBR. Yeah, literally so many. And reading so many, like there's a little stack right there. I'm trying to read as many books as I am tall. That's this year. So like, I don't know, but it's such a interesting conversation to have with somebody who narrates books. And I just want to say, like, thank you so much for coming on,
course.
because you've definitely opened up my eyes. And I also want to say that you are whether or not you see it, you are a success story, even where you are now, because you went in with like I want to try, and you did the research and you put the work in, and you're doing like stuff with like Spotify and Podium. And like that's incredible. Even like where you are today, that is
Thank
crazy
you.
good.
Oh, thanks
So
so much, Tyler. Oh, that's nice. I think it's hard sometimes, whatever type of creative you are, to recognize what you've done. And like, you may not have made it to where you want to be, but you've made it somewhere. So I appreciate that a lot, Tyler.
You're doing something that a lot of people want to do and don't have
yeah.
the guts to do.
Or just think that they can't. Like, this is a proof positive. You can. Even if you don't have like the biggest background in being a voice actor, maybe you think your voice is trash. You don't know how good your voice could be for a character.
Carmen has an incredible
until you
voice,
try.
though.
She
Oh,
does. She is like an
so
exception to
beautiful.
the rule. Her voice is amazing. She also enunciates, which I mumble, and I've definitely picked up on that in this podcast.
Mumbling is a good thing, I've learned with voice acting. Sometimes you need to be able to mumble. But with your book, your shelf trophies, as I call my books now, like that is a difficult thing.
Yeah.
Even as an audiobook narrator to this day, it's really hard for me to not. I prefer, if I'm going to spend my money, oh God, I'm an audiobook narrator and I'm saying this, but if I'm going to have to choose where to spend my money, do I get the physical book or the audiobook? I'm telling you, I'm getting that physical book. And I'm a narrator.
It's so pretty.
It's pretty, but I like the accessibility that audiobooks
Yes.
provide, because I'm out and about
Yeah.
all the time, and I can pop them on when I'm driving. I can pop them on as I'm doing chores at home, as I'm folding laundry, whatever. I hardly ever have time to sit and read a book. It's
Yeah,
so
I could-
hard.
Yeah, I want both, but if I only have enough money for one,
I do
and
too.
that cover is pretty and it smells nice.
Yes.
Oh my God, the smell of books.
So I understand your
Yes.
stack of books and I understand your loyalty, but I love being a narrator and audiobooks are great.
They are great.
I'm definitely gonna have to listen to your books. So you've made a fan
If
out of
I
me.
can recommend one to start, there's one that I've done a ton, right? But there's one I'm extremely proud of, to the point of I am pretty sure I'm going to be putting it up for an award this year. I know, but like,
Which one?
it's called The Engineer's Apprentice by J.R. Martin. It is solo narrated. I took some risks on that book. I love the story itself. It's the first book I've ever narrated where, as I'm prepping it and pre-prepping and doing all those things on this book, I liked it, right? As I'm performing the book,
yeah.
I started to love it. And I listened back to all 9 hours of that, and I think it's one of my top favorite books I've ever listened to. I've never done that myself. I've never been able to like fall in love with a book because I narrated it, ever. I was like, it was an experience, and I'm really proud of it. So, The Engineer's Apprentice by J.R. Martin is a steampunk fantasy.
I do like steampunk.
Before we forget,
The
let's
giveaway.
do the giveaway.
Okay. Yes. This is actually a perfect segue. So Carmen has graciously agreed to give away an Audible audiobook code to a book she has narrated. So what we ask is for our guests to provide us a code word, and our listeners will then send a message to our Little Prince podcast with the podcast, and then we will draw a winner from the entries. So Carmen, what is your code word?
It is turtle.
Turtle. All right, you guys heard it. Send us a message on to Instagram on our Little Prince podcast, and then you will be entered to win an audiobook narrated by Carmen herself.
The amazing
It might be by
Carmen.
Audrey Obeyn, which is my romantic.
Audrey Obeyn.
It might be Audrey Obeyn.
Spicy. We'll see which one.
Yeah.
The spicy. All right. So I don't want to wrap it up, but I know we have to wrap it up.
I literally have 30 people heading to my house right this moment. So we do have to wrap up, but I would love to have you on, because I didn't think I was going to have a lot of questions, and like me over here with my hand up being like, I have more questions.
Can we have you back?
You're learning about audiobooks.
Yeah, we want to have you back.
I am. I'm a virgin and about to pop some cherries.
Popping
Uh,
them cherries.
yes. But I hope that you had fun because that's the whole
I had a
goal.
ton of fun here, and I was looking forward to this. I think it's great. It's great to get the idea of audiobooks out there, the idea of AI also out there, because it does not need to be in our audiobooks or any of our creative spaces.
Correct.
And I just think the audiobooks are great, and I'm just really appreciative of this opportunity to talk about it.
Thank you for coming on. I was so excited.
Yeah, Jamie still,
Like,
she's probably got like a
bucket
million other
list.
questions. Carmen, I hate to leave you. Honestly, I could sit and talk to you for so long, and I know, JB,
Oh,
you've probably got a million
yes.
questions. But we need to wrap it up for today, and we'd love to have you back. But before we let you go, the mic is yours. Let the people know what you got going on in
And
your
where we
life.
can find you.
Okay. Hi. Well, I'm Carmen Seantel.
Hi.
I was really happy to be here. I am an audiobook narrator. You can find audiobooks that I've narrated on Audible. If you look up Carmen Seantel, that's spelled Seantel, you'll find all of my family-friendly titles. If you want to find something that's maybe a little bit more risque, you look up Audrey Obeyn. For spelling, you can look up carmenchantel.com. All of my info is on there, as well as my romance pseudonym. Audrey Obeyn, Obeyn, is my romance pseudonym for those who like things a little bit on the spicier side. Coming up to the booth, I have several romance titles, as well as some duet and dual narration with some really cool co-narrators and masked narrators coming up. I have a book by Candy Steiner called A Love Letter to Whiskey, releasing in October. So excited about that one. It will be duet narrated, as well as my first ever children's book, which is I narrated that. That will be coming out in July. For updates, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and a little bit of YouTube, but mostly TikTok, Instagram. Carmen Seantel narrator, all one word.
Thank you so much, Carmen.
Damn, she nailed
It's like
that.
you've done this
She
before.
nailed that.
And
Yeah.
your voice, brilliant.
I just talking to mics all the time. This is fun.
This was so good. I don't want it to end. I would love to have you back sometime if you're ever down. And I need to get my finances figured out so I can get my books narrated by you. But
Okay.
one thing at a time.
One email at a time. Just hit me up, girl.
Yes, one message at a time.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Carmen.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
I hope you have a
You
good rest of
have
the
a good
weekend.
day.
Yes, you too. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.